This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Thursday, August the 21st. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams, he's produced the program. You'll be speaking with David when you pick up the phone to give us a call to get in the queue to get on the air. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, a toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So way to go, Gavin Baggs. Paradise resident, of course, competing in his fourth Canada Games. Yesterday picked up his second medal, this time a gold in the 1,500-metre wheelchair race. Apparently, he was pretty close going into the last lap where he just took off. So finally, Gavin Baggs hits the podium, not once but twice in his fourth game. So congratulations to him. Big result for our women's soccer team against Saskatchewan. Down early 1-0. Millie Jane storms back to score a pair, and we beat Saskatchewan 2-1. Men's softball, nice victory yesterday. I think it was 7-3 over New Brunswick. And the golfers, a little bit more of a mild day for them to play at Ballyhaley. And, of course, the decathlon, probably one of the coolest events. And generally speaking, whether it be at the Olympics or World Games or at the Canada Summer Games, whoever wins the decathlon, they get deemed to be the greatest athlete of the Games. And in this case, the decathlon wrapped up yesterday. Team Quebec's Edouard Lavoie-Beaulieu won the decathlon gold, unofficial title as the greatest athlete in the competition. 10 different track and field events. It's pretty grueling stuff, and I think it's pretty credible to say that they might be the greatest athlete at the Games when you win that particular competition. So the Games continue today. Good luck to all hands, especially our young athletes. All right, wildfire update. I guess it feels like government updates on a daily basis are a thing of the past for now. Fair enough. So we have been told that the Kingston fire, of course, was absolutely massive, did not grow overnight. Paddy's Pond and the Martin Lake fire have been deemed to be near containment. So some good news, and it does feel like we've turned the corner on the wildfires at this time. So there's a bunch of things. So the off-road vehicle ban has been lifted. Now the fire ban remains in place until the 7th of September, but you can indeed use your off-road vehicle. The government is asking for people to be mindful of the conditions where they choose to go on their, whether it be their quad or side-by-side, dirt bike, mini bike, whatever the case may be. People are also encouraged to have a fire extinguisher on hand, just in case. So you can go out into the bush today, as long as you're mindful of where you're going and what you're doing. So I guess some good news on that front. Then, I know it feels premature, but I guarantee you people who have lost their homes are thinking about what's next. We mentioned yesterday that a 40-year veteran of the construction industry talking about how difficult it is going to be to rebuild. Just inside the Conception Bay North fire, they're talking about 203-ish structures have been lost. Basically, that they've come to that realization based on how many structures lost power. Okay. Now, if you own one of these homes, my heart breaks for you. It really, truly does. And everyone's personal loss will be, of course, very considerable in their own hearts and minds. Then you think about some of the iconic structures that have been lost. We can rebuild, but you can't rebuild some of those. Like people are talking about Crowley House in Ocrapick Cove. If you've ever been in Ocrapick Cove, you know full well what Crowley House is. It was not only an iconic structure, but it was a heritage building and stable and garage, and it's gone. And the owner, very few people had ever been inside Crowley House, but the owner, Bob Kelland, was talking, and his grandfather, Otto Kelland. Anyway, he was talking about maybe opening it up to the public to have a look at some of the artifacts, including maybe some of Otto Kelland's dories that he was famous for building. But it's gone. So those things can't be replaced. So it's just terrible up and down the line. I hear from people who are part of the evacuation zone regarding the Kingston fire, of which impacts, I think, 9 different communities. And they added a caveat at the beginning of the email saying, look, I'm not trying to be greedy here, but I had very little to nothing when I was evacuated, and talking about the $500 to cover incidentals. It's a fair question being asked. If you were evacuated from a community that was impacted by the Paddy's Pond fire and you were out for 3 days, you got the $500. Someone who's out for coming on 3 weeks, still the same $500. So they're asking, and in very fair fashion, certainly in this email they sent me, is that whether or not a consideration can be addressed by the Premier, who has said there is no consideration at this moment in time to see an increase of that $500 to the recommended save from Jim Dinn of $1,000. So you want to take it on, we can do it. And I think more and more people are thinking and talking about just how should the volunteer firefighters be compensated. And to a man, to a woman, they say they don't get into being a volunteer firefighter just so they can get paid if indeed something extraordinary like these wildfires happens. But I think it's a legitimate conversation to talk about. What do you think should be the compensation? We can offer all the gratitude we like, and we should. But if people have taken time off work, maybe lost time, gobbled up some of their own annual leave to do what they're doing to help fight these fires, it's admirable and courageous to say the very least. Here's some numbers for context across the country. There's over 720 wildfires burning in Canada today. And then this is the breakdown of how many firefighters are in the country. And I would have never guessed this. There's around 124,000 firefighters in Canada. 87,000 are volunteers. 87,000 out of 124,000 firefighters. So that's pretty amazing stuff. Then, unfortunately, apparently it's becoming harder and harder to get people to volunteer. The numbers are declining. And we talked about that exact same issue yesterday when I referenced a poll, a survey, about whether or not Canadians think some mandatory service, whether it be tutoring kids or working in national parks, is a smart conversation to have. And surprisingly, a lot of Canadians, a majority of Canadians thought it's a good idea. Now, I think mandatory service in the military is a step way too far. But, volunteer hours and volunteer commitment are really dropping across the country. I guess it kind of started with the pandemic, and it has not recovered to the levels that we saw, say, in 2018. But for the volunteer firefighters, what do you think? Then there's an issue regarding the election. I'm not surprised this has come to bear. Paul Lane and Eddie Joyce, two independent members, have written a letter to the Premier asking for the legislature to be reopened and for a motion passed to move past the October 14th deadline to have a provincial election. The distinct reference to those who've been impacted and displaced by the fires and people possibly in no mood for an election. And I'll leave it up to you whether or not you think that's a good idea. But when we talk about, give the province some time to recover from these wildfires, get the cleanup going, entertaining conversations about rebuilding, those types of affairs. My question would be, and I don't disagree that that's a reasonable request from Mr. Lane and Mr. Joyce, but how long would you actually have to wait for it to be the right time, whatever the right time might be? I don't disagree with the assertion that there's going to be plenty of people impacted by the fires that really aren't thinking about an election, really aren't thinking about politicians, really aren't thinking about having to engage with someone who's, quote unquote, knocking on your door that's now been burnt to the ground. But there you go. You want to take it on. We can do it. And thankfully, the RCMP continue to investigate the cause of the fires, whether it be the Kingston fire and a couple of fires that have popped up around Twillingate. And if you know who's responsible, if that's the case, that these are the result of arson, if you know, and someone does, if someone lit these fires on purpose and they got out of control to the extent which we've seen, someone knows about it. And do the right thing. They might have burnt your house down. They might have burnt your nanny's house down. So there you go. All right, moving on, but sticking with law enforcement. And this is a really good idea, I think. There was an announcement yesterday coming from Chief Pat Roach and the Premier regarding public safety. Curiously, I have a friend of mine who lives in Ottawa and has asked me several times over the years, why don't we have things like special constables working with the RNC so that fully sworn police officers can do fully sworn police officer work? So apparently there is a pilot program coming. They're going to spend $2.2 million over the next 3 years, and then, of course, it'll be modeled after Ottawa and Winnipeg. So this makes a lot of sense to me. So these special constables are going to get a 10-week training program beginning in the winter of 2026. Then there's 4 weeks of on-the-job training with the RNC, and they'll be doing things like supervising detained individuals, guarding crime scenes, performing traffic control at accident scenes, and completing some administrative duties. All makes sense. Just think about it. I think this is one of the examples offered by the chief, is if there's a serious collision or an overturned tractor trailer on the highway that might take 8-10 hours to remove to get traffic flowing again, that's a good job for a special constable, as opposed to, as they call them, a fully sworn police officer. What do you think? Sticking with crime and punishment, this time at the bench. the judges of the country. Well, not all the judges. So there's been an independent body created some while back called the Compensation and Benefits Commission. They have a request from Superior Court judges, Federal Court judges, and the Supreme Court of Canada justices looking for a $60,000 top-up to their base salaries. It happened back in 2006 as well, and then Prime Minister Stephen Harper rejected it, talking about the economic reality of the time. These conclusions and recommendations are not binding, but here's what they put forward. The Commission concluded the base salary of most federal judges should rise from $396,700 to $424,700. Most salaries of most Chief Justices rising from $435,000 to $465,700. At the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice salary would increase from $510,000 to $546,000, while the other 8 justices get a $33,000 boost, and that salary would then become $505,700. The conclusions also come with some commentary saying that the pay raise is required so that they have the best and the brightest private sector lawyers to apply for these positions on the bench. All right. They go on to say the average salary among senior private sector lawyers who could reasonably aspire to a role, their salary could exceed $700,000. So I suppose that makes sense, but this is all about the concept of judicial independence. So government doesn't have a whole lot of options here, do they? Like in this province, there was a back and forth between provincial judges and the government about pay raises. But if we think that judicial independence is important, and it is, we can't get into the realm of how it's operated south of the border. But what does government do here? Because if you don't follow the recommendations, and even if you do, it's a damned if you do, a damned if you don't. Because there's always going to be the consideration in some people's minds that the bench has been politically weaponized, even though I think a lot of that is grossly exaggerated. But that's the pay raise conclusion coming from the Compensation and Benefits Commission. And it is important that it not be left to the whim of politicians to decide how judges on Superior Court, Supreme Court, and federal courts get paid. What do you think? All right, how are we doing out there, Dave? Every now and then, I get an email from someone talking about the fact that someone belonged to them, a loved one, who has a last will and testament, and the person chosen to be an executor is failing to complete his or her duties. I get these emails every now and then. So there's a few things that can be done. And in this case, the email yesterday was regarding a very fundamental, straightforward will. So issues, if and when the appointed executor fails to fulfill their duties, it could, of course, delay estate distribution, financial penalties possibly, beneficiary disputes for sure, and some legal liability. So what can you do if the executor fails to complete their duties? First off, you got to get legal advice, right? But you can file a formal complaint with the court system to legally compel the executor to produce all the accounting records, whether it be detailing of assets and debts and distribution actions. How do you replace an executor in Canada? And when is it necessary? So there is a legal process. You file a formal application with the court along with all the supporting evidence. You give notice to the applicant, to beneficiaries and other parties of interest. You participate in a court hearing where both sides will have the opportunity to plead their cases. Then you go down through the process of selecting a new executor. So right off the bat, there are serious complications that come when an executor has absolutely performed this negligent treatment of a last will and testament. First off, you get the legal advice, and then you go through the formal process of filing an application with the courts to see the executor either removed or to light a fire under said executor to do his or her job as they should. Someone wanted me to bring that up. Happy to do it. All right, let's get into a little bit of housing. And this is about rent. The numbers aren't encouraging here in this province. Here we go. Rent rose by 7.8% in this province, and that's the highest in the country. Second on the list, 5.6% in PEI and 4.7% in British Columbia. Oh boy. So Larry Short, who was often interviewed, he's a financial advisor on these types of matters, pointed to the fact, and this is interesting, he says, and we know this to be true, when some of the mega projects come to roost, and whether that be oil or what have you, it does have a distinct impact on the price of homes and the real estate market in this province. Still, the average price of a home in this province is lower than any other province in the country. I believe that to be true. But rent. He makes a specific reference to hydro development, which of course would be the memorandum of understanding between ourselves and Quebec, and it kind of seems and sounds like he believes it's going to come, and it looks a lot like it will, and we can absolutely have that conversation. What also comes on the heels of these types of stories regarding rent increases, and that's a huge increase, absolutely huge increase, 7.8%, people will automatically go to the thought or the concept of rent control. There's lots of pretty good arguments for and against rent control, but this is getting completely out of hand. To think that we're going to see, let's say, for instance, hypothetically, the MOU becomes 10 or 12 definitive agreements by April of next year, and then all the work begins. There's no possible way to see any significant infusion of supply in that amount of time. So no question, that 7.8%, if the hypothetical comes to pass next April, that's going to see another big increase. It just simply will. It's just the way the economy works insofar as the basic concept of supply and demand. So where do we go from here? It's already out of control for so many people. So whether it be a different approach to a stress test regarding mortgage, whether we need to absolutely do more in the way of building units and encouraging numbers, even inside some of the bleak numbers in the economic update, housing starts this year as of, I think it was last month, 2006. Nowhere near the numbers we need to build, but that rent increase story is inevitably going to bring upon the conversation of rent control. What do you think? All right, let's keep going. This one comes from Jim Din, and we've heard this conversation many, many, many times. He's asking for permanent job offers to be offered to nursing grads. Absolutely. You know, I hear the stories all the time. My son or daughter is in nursing school, and the only offer they have is for a casual part-time, and it has to be in a long-term care facility. The Registered Nurses Union has risen this flag many, many times. There's really no good argument, other than potential cost savings, to not offer graduates permanent full-time jobs. I mean, we need them. If we're talking about reducing our reliance on travel nurses, one surefire way is that every single graduate from a nursing school gets captured, that's the wrong word, is brought into the fold with a permanent full-time job. Because you know full well, if I have a student loan or I'm looking for some job security into the future, and someone from Halifax or Digby, Nova Scotia says, I have a permanent full-time job for you here, then what's the likelihood of them leaving? It's probably higher than if they were offered a permanent full-time job in their home province. So I think that's probably wise. And then yesterday, a pretty wise caller once again, talking about nurse practitioners and the need for them to be in the private sector, open up their own clinic, and to bill MCP. She made the analogies quite clearly and succinctly. If I see a nurse practitioner at the emergency room at the Health Sciences Centre, I don't have to pay. Right? If I go to a collaborative care clinic and I end up speaking with and dealing with or get consulted by a nurse practitioner, I don't have to pay. So what's the difference? As opposed to going to St. Clair's, is to go down Lamarchin Road to a private clinic to see the same professional with the same qualifications and not have to pay. I think she made the points very clearly and succinctly, as I said. All right, so there's lots floating around that we could talk about, but I'm told the Prime Minister is in town today. So apparently, and I don't know if the official itinerary has been released yet by the Prime Minister's office, but Mark Carney is going to be in St. John's today. What would be on the agenda? Let's help set it. So a bunch of things. You know, whether it be any further conversation or information about things like the proposed East-West Energy Corridor, which that conversation goes back to John Diefenbaker. And nothing's ever happened. And it should. Will it be any conversation regarding potential federal involvement in Beta Nord? And remember, that's one of the sticking points for sure, is that Article 82 of the United Nations says quite clearly, outside our economic protective zone, there will indeed have to be royalties paid to, as they call, developing nations. The country signed on it, but the province did not. The feds a couple of years ago said they're not interested in paying it and leaving it up to the province. And the province fought back and said, hey, you signed it, you should pay. Is that on the agenda? And then, of course, the obvious, the fixed link. Whether or not you think it's a good or bad idea, the federal Liberal government has put it in the hands of the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, has called it in successive letters, mandate letters to ministers, that it is a nation-building project, which is exactly what Bill C-5 was speaking to. Shovel-ready, nation-building projects. I didn't deem it that. The federal Liberal government did. Is that on it? We also have a court challenge ongoing regarding equalisation. I don't know where that's going to land, but is that part of the conversation? You know, the government here has been pretty vocal about how the formula works. And, of course, people will lay that at the feet of the, say, for instance, the Trudeau Liberal government. And, of course, that equalization formula that's being used today was created by the Conservatives. Even though Jason Kenney, when he was the Premier of Alberta, would rail against Trudeau about the equalization formula, when Jason Kenney was a senior minister of the Crown, sitting in the room when the equalization formula was created and passed and implemented. Fascinating. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Oh, very quickly. It's been 90 days since there was a House of Assembly resolution for immediate creation of a disability advocate. Over 1,300 days since the Accessibility Act was put in force, zero standards in place. When is that going to happen? We're taking your emails. It's openline@VOCM.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. The only way that's going to work is if you're in the queue to talk about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. A couple of very quick comments. So I've been told that people who are scheduled to receive their Canada Disability Benefit, which is indeed today, August 21st, have not received it. So we'll send up a quick note to one of the constituency assistants that we know to see if we can't get some information for you. Another quick one. So mentioned that Jim Dennis talking about nursing grads being offered permanent full-time jobs. And then someone writes an email with a fair point saying, how about we also consider offering permanent full-time jobs to those who are currently casual nurses? Now, not all the casual nurses want a full-time job. Many of them have turned it down. There was, I think, a $3,000 bonus to join the permanent full-time ranks. Very few took the offer. Why? Because they have more flexibility in scheduling, what have you. But I'll put that back out there for you. Let's go to line number one to begin the show this morning with the independent member of the House of Assembly, Mount Pearl Southlands. That's Paul Lane. And Paul, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you this morning?
Doing okay. Phone line's terrible. Dave, what should we do? Can we call Paul back? Yeah, let's do that. Dave will take over there. See if we can clear that up. So that is a fair point. But I guess we should try to get the numbers from the Registered Nurses Union, the Vet Coffee, or her support staff. Because when we were talking about all the different incentives and bonuses that were put forward, whether it be for family doctors to set up practice in more rural parts of the province with massive bonuses, if they have a full patient roster, those types of things. But there absolutely was an incentive offered to casual nurses to join the permanent full-time ranks. And again, one of the things you hear from nurses, registered nurses, that is, in this conversation, is that as much as we talk about pay, it's the atmosphere in the workplace and the inability to get time off when you need time off. So that's, add that to the fact that we do know, and we've heard from individual nurses many, many times, is that there's something disconcerting when you're working shoulder to shoulder with a travel agency nurse who's making at least double what you're making. So there's a lot to that. We'll add the casual nurses into the conversation, no problem at all. Let's see if we have a better line on line one with Paul. Paul Lane, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you this morning?
Doing okay, thanks. How about you?
Good. I just had to step outside. I was in Waterford Valley High inside the gym working with the Canada Games, volunteering, and so anyway, I stepped outside. I hope you can hear me better.
That's better now.
Okay, that's good. Paddy, I just wanted to, expand a little on your preamble and I guess what myself and Eddie had written to the Premier. Before I do, though, I just want to take one quick second just to say to the people of Conception Bay North in particular that certainly my heart goes out to them, and I'm sure we will all pull together, and if there's anything that we can do to help them get through this, I know we will as a province. I know it's a great worry and a great loss for many, but we're certainly thinking of them. And also to all the firefighters and search and rescue and forestry workers and plane operators and so on, pilots and so on, everyone that's involved in fighting this fire. I just want to again join with everyone in thanking them for all their great work, and we certainly commend them all for what they're doing, and we hope they all stay safe. Anyway, with that said, I guess as you had mentioned in your preamble, myself and Eddie about a week or two ago, we had written the Premier. And just to be clear, I absolutely recognize it's the Premier's call in terms of when the next election is going to be, and we're not certain. We certainly recognize that, but we just had suggested to him that he may want to give some consideration, to possibly move the election if necessary. And if that was something that he wanted to do and was willing to do, we would certainly support that. And for the reasons that I gave, I guess, to your colleagues here at VOCM, the timing of it as it relates to the wildfires. And, I think it's important to note here that I know quite often when elections get called by the government of the day, unfortunately, it's more of a political calculus than anything else. And that doesn't matter, and that's regardless of which party is in power, of course. It really should be about what's in the best interests of the province and of the people. And myself and Eddie have no horse in this race. We're independent members. My district was impacted at one point with the Paddy's Pond fire in terms of people in Southlands being on alert. Thank God that's ended, and everything seems to be going in the right direction there. So we're fine. And if the Premier wanted to call an election tomorrow, it wouldn't matter to me. I'm still going to do my thing and in my district, and I'll let the people of Mount Pearl Southlands decide whether they want me to continue or if they don't. So there's no political advantage or gain in this for me whatsoever. We're simply motivated by wanting to do what is the right thing, what is in the best interest of the people. So, I think it would be great if the Premier, Tony Wakeham, Jim Dinn, they're the leaders of the three parties. Maybe they've already done it. I don't know. Maybe they should sit down, size up the situation where we're to with the fires, what's going to be required once all fires are under control and hopefully out, and make that determination as to whether it's going to be, in everyone's best interest to carry on with the election before October 14th or on October 14th, or whether it should be delayed by a month or two. And they could quite easily do that. We could open the House Assembly. It could be done in an hour. We don't need all members there. I think there's only 10 members required to be a quorum, as an example. We can also use virtual technology as we did in COVID. So it could be done if the will was there to do it, and everybody agreed it was the right thing to do. So we're simply throwing it out there as a suggestion to get together and make that decision and do it in the best interests of the people, not based on what you think your political fortunes are going to be by calling it at a particular time.
It's fair enough. The question would be, delayed until when? Because the remnants of the fire and the cleanup and people's mental mindset, it's not going to be 1 or 2 months. It's going to be a long time before the so-called smoke is cleared here in full. So I get where you're coming from, but I just don't really know when. Because we also, I think for the most part, voters don't want a winter election. I mean, that jeopardizes, or increases voter apathy, and you never know what's going to happen in the wintertime regarding storms, what have you. So I just wouldn't even know when to circle on the calendar would be better. Even though I don't dispute your summary point here, but I think the next logical question would be, if not now, when?
Yeah, no, I totally understand that, and maybe it would be determined that that we would just need an additional month or two or whatever, and if it's determined that it's longer, so be it. I'm not going to throw out any particular date. Again, what all myself and Eddie are suggesting is that really the three leaders would get together in a non-partisan way to look at things and say, is it really, based on where we're to at this point in time, based on an election that has to happen by October 14th, is that a reasonable time frame now? Because people are going to be out knocking on doors. Well, people are out knocking on doors now, and so on. Is that really the best time to be doing it? Or is it something we need to push ahead a month or two or whatever to get us in a better space? Hopefully we anticipate that the fires will be under control by that time. We anticipate that, people will be back in their communities by that time, or at least, that assistance will be offered by that time, and they'd be in a better space to move forward. Again, it's just a suggestion. I don't tell myself and Eddie, we don't tell the Premier what to do. It's his call. We're just simply saying that if all the leaders wanted to get together and felt it was in the best interest of the people to delay, then we would certainly support that as independent members, because we are simply motivated to do what is in the best interest of the people involved. And again, that does not involve the people in my district. It doesn't involve the people in Eddie's district. We have no horse in the race. just want to do the right thing by the people. That's it.
Understood, and appreciate the time. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paddy. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
So quick email out of the corner of my eye saying, what did I say about the disability advocate? I simply rhymed off some numbers that I think the consensus amongst our elected officials is that there is a requirement for a disabilities advocate. What that mandate might look like when compared to the child and youth advocate or the seniors advocate remains to be seen. But the numbers are pretty clear. 90 days since there was a resolution passed in the House of Assembly for immediate creation of a disability advocate. And I know as the days roll on that issues pop up, wildfires and otherwise, but it has been 90 days. And it's 1,300 days since the Accessibility Act in force and zero standards in place. So those are some numbers for consideration. Somewhere in the neighborhood of a third of the population is disabled. And then it was the comment I made about the Canada Disabilities Benefit being sent out. It is the date. Got a bunch of emails in rapid fire succession saying it's not till the 27th. The Government of Canada's website say that the Canada Disability Benefit payment dates are July 17th, August 21st, September 18th, October 16th, November 20th, and December 18th. That's the best I could do to find those dates. Let's see here. Today's a good day to get on the show. Topic entirely up to you. I know some people are hesitant to talk about something other than wildfires, and I get that, but there's still a ton of stuff going on that we can absolutely talk about. We can offer our hearts and minds and gratitude to first responders, and we can talk about folks who were evacuated, but there's also a plethora of issues that are up for discussion on the show. If you're in and around town, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. We're taking a break, and then we're coming back. Welcome back to the show. Sorry. Line number one. Mike, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Good morning to you.
Paddy, there's a person in the community out here where I live too, and he's loaded drunk all the time. He's driving. I reported him now about a dozen times, and a lot of other people report him. I've seen him coming into the service station with a dozen beer and open it up right in front of the station. I saw him drunk now 4 times in the last week or so, and I'm not talking about now just having a couple of beers. I'm talking about loaded, can't stand up drunk. I met him one day coming around the turn, and he was over 2 feet on the other side of the road. I saw him yesterday anyway, passing along by my place. And he happens, he goes to a service station and gets beer. Then on the way home, you got to pass along by the road that I'm on, which is a cab road. And he comes in one end and goes out the other, but he lets his dog run out the gravel road, the cab road. And if his dog slows down, he bumps the dog with the car to drive him on. Anyway, he's drinking beer all the time. I saw him throwing the beer cans out the window. So I reported to police because he was going around his dog 2 or 3 kilometers. He had plenty of time to get here between this and his home. So that was good enough. I called him and that, whatever. Anyway, he finally went out the road. So I was back the roadways, the main road, and I was watching him. Anyway, he went towards his home. So I called and told him where he was to. Nothing. And they had plenty of time to get there from the detachment. Anyway, he went down in the community where he was to. So I had to go down to the post office. I noticed he wasn't there. So I said, he's still out driving around somewhere in the community. I called him back. I think that was 3 times or something I called him. Then anyway, I didn't know where he was to or whatever. And I was down doing a bit of work and that and whatever. And a couple people, another fellow told me that some people down in the community, and he said, yes, he said, we saw him the other day. He said, he was loaded drunk 12 o'clock in the day. And anyway, later on, I was driving by a place, and I saw him in this other person's house. So I reported him again. I said, he's about 1,000 feet or so away from his home. And this officer called me up there, that answered phone then, was like, well, how do you know he was drinking? Right? Saucy to me. And getting on with this stuff. And he said, sure. Well, he said, he's not doing nothing now, is he? I said, no, he's not doing nothing there now. But I said, you got to get home. And anyway, the attitude that I got from the police officer was ridiculous. Totally and utterly ridiculous. And this man is down there for some reason or other. the Mounties will not get him. Now, at the same time, 2 or 3 weeks ago, they got a false report about me drinking. They set up down the road from where I was to. They waited for over 2 hours on the side of the road. As soon as I halted on the road, they pulled me over. I wasn't drinking or nothing, and they just got me insurance, driver's license, registration, and then they lied to me about why they were there. I know that I was reported, and I know who reported me. But anyway, the thing is that this person has been down there now for years, drinking, driving, just about every day of the week, and they have not done nothing.
If you see him go into the,
they won't.
Sure. If you see him go into the gas station to pick up a box of beer, why don't you just park right behind his vehicle until the police show up, or something like that?
I don't know if you're allowed to or whatever, but well, he might not be drunk then because he just opened up one by the service station.
Yeah.
So he might not be drunk then, but he's driving down the road in the next half hour or so. He probably is, and he's drinking and driving. So, you know, it'd be difficult, something like that. Like, I was thinking about that, like if you're barring the road off or something, but then again, you turn around and get back. You know, you're looking for a confrontation, right?
Yeah.
And I don't mind that with him.
Drunk driving.
All
right, Mike. Let's have a conversation. You talk, I talk. Yeah. You talk, I talk.
Okay.
So, drunk driving is a scourge. I believe just the RCMP alone in 2024, I think they laid somewhere close to 350 drunk driving arrests. And I don't know what the RNC numbers are, but you know they've got to be massive too. And let's just all be honest. Regardless of how many charges are laid, it's probably 10 times more got away with it. And, you know, a lot of this might be able to be boiled back to alcoholism, but there's so many people willing to put their life and my life on the line because they're willing to get behind the wheel drunk. Look, when people are intoxicated or under the influence of drugs, good decisions are hard to come by. But boy, oh boy, the amount of people that are willing to get behind the wheel and they're absolutely 3 sheets to the wind is wild.
Yeah, well, like you said, I don't know why this particular fella hasn't been. The people around the community thinks that he's an informant for the police, telling the police everything or something. That he got some connection there, somewhere, of why they don't have him. Like the number of complaints about him, I know there's dozens, and I've called in. I don't know how many times. Whenever I see him drunk, but if he sees me now, he knows that I'm going to report him when he's drunk, and then he takes off for home. But yesterday, like I said, he was down around the whole community yesterday for hours, driving around loaded drunk. And
if you can prove that someone was behind the wheel, the police now have the right in this country to go into your house after you've left your vehicle and still charge you. Which, we could talk about the fairness of that, but that's something. That's a real thing.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you something now about this fella. His sons beat up a car in front of his house, beat the windows out, beat the headlights out, basically destroyed the car, left on the side of the road in front of his house, and his son painted it on the side of the car. What kind of a father gets his sons addicted to coke? And this is the type of person that you're dealing with that's out there now, drinking, drunk all the time. He's a despicable character to me, and I don't know why the police are not doing anything, but they're not. I've got a complaint in now to the RCMP Commission about the sergeant down there, and I came back from them. They said that I got a legitimate complaint and they're investigating, but it's going to take weeks for it. But the attitude of what's down there in that detachment, and with the attitude of that sergeant that's supposed to be running in charge of it or whatever, I think leaves one hell of a lot to be desired as regards to a peace officer. And lie, you got no problem with them lying. They lie their heads off, and I got proof of it too, and it's going to be brought up with the commission.
Okay.
I had 2 officers come to my house 12 o'clock in the night and lying to me, whatever, on body cameras. And
Okay.
all there.
Point taken and understood. I'm late for the break, Mike, but I appreciate the time. And hopefully, every time anybody reports a suspected drunk driver, that there's some action taken. Because it could be me or my wife or my kids or you or Dave Williams or someone that's important to me that ends up in a collision with someone who's loaded drunk, to use your word. Mike, I appreciate the time. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.
Take care. You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's see here. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're talking traffic. Oh, just a couple of quickies that have come to my attention. And let's go here with the ferries. So, Art is reporting that the officers were walking off the vessel, the ferry serving Bell Island, this morning. Suspensions offered for non-union related issues. Talk about morale and the management inside Marine Services. So apparently that happened this morning. So if anyone on Bell Island would like to chime in, please do. Also, won't get too deep into it, but for people out in the Humber Valley area, whether you live there or have visited in the recent past, give some idea about what you're seeing regarding the damage or the devastation being left behind by the white tussock moth caterpillar. Apparently they're out there in droves and they have chewed through an awful lot of the forest, and it's only going to see greater numbers into the future. We'll dig into that a little bit, but let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2 and say good morning to the Ward 3 councillor here in the city of St. John's. That's Greg Nosworthy. Greg, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you today?
Not too bad at all. How about you?
Not so bad, my friend. It's a nice day and smoke is holding off. You can't be better. Really can't be better.
Yeah, it looks nice. Looking forward to getting out in it.
Absolutely. So, Patty, I just want to talk about a couple things going on in the city here. First, just want to let everybody know, of course, that the Old Mews is going to be closing, and that's actually next week, this coming Thursday. And we've got a couple of events to mark it off. Next Wednesday, there's going to be a free welcome, everybody's welcome swim from 4 to 5, and then another one 5 to 6. Lane and leisure swim, and again, these are all free. There's also going to be a lane and leisure swim on Thursday, and free aquatic fitness class. We've got racquetball, and there's also going to be, and this one's pretty exciting, I'm excited for it, a free dog swim. So we'll allow folks to take their pups into the pool as we decommission the pool and have one final swim. It's going to be a great time, and marking off half a century of memories there at the Old Mews.
Yeah, I mean, the dog swim sounds like a bit of fun. I would imagine they'll allow for some of the chemical treatment of the water to wane before we let the pups in there, even though you can put a pup in your backyard pool, even if you've got the pH levels addressed and the chlorine levels and all the rest of it. But it is really irritating on the eyes.
Absolutely, and we always make sure that everything's as safe as it can be. But of course, folks are reminded, give your pup a rinse. They're not used to these types of things, and it's always good to keep them in mind. And of course, then we got the new Muse is going to open up September 15th, which I'm really excited for. I know a lot of folks are. I was chatting with a gentleman last night, was talking about how he's made a group of friends. They go for a swim once a week, and then they go out for breakfast together, and they're looking forward to the new one. And so am I. It's going to be great.
What's the timeline for the Old Mews to go by the wayside? To go, I don't mean closed for activities. I mean to be torn down or repurposed. Or what's the actual plan?
Yeah, so we're looking at that now. The facility itself is being decommissioned, of course, and then the next question is how do we make best use of the site, whether it's the building and the land itself or just the land. So our various staff are looking at that and what makes the most sense. It's a pretty centralized area in the city, of course, being right next to Muddy Pond. So we've got to take a real critical eye here, whether it's for programming or something else. So we're in that process right now.
Okay. Fair enough, because, when that type of activity takes place, it comes with a lot of ramifications for the surrounding neighborhood. So we'll see when the timelines become more evident. Anything else you want to talk about this morning, Greg?
Yes, absolutely. So just want to let folks know, of course, too, we've got bridge rehabilitation work on the Columbus Drive overpass there over Waterford Bridge Road. So that's going to be starting next Tuesday, the 26th, and that's going to go right until summer 2026, so next year. So the work this year is primarily on sidewalks and median and some work underneath the overpass. And then we'll kind of work on the repaving of the overpass portion next year. But as a result, there's going to be some pretty significant traffic impacts for the next little while. So next Tuesday, eastbound traffic on Columbus between, say, Topsail and Babels Road is going to be reduced to one lane. And then as well on Waterford Bridge Road, we'll have a portion there from the Waterford Hospital right over to the Tower Corporate Campus there by Corpus Christi. That's also going to be reduced. So just want to let folks know, if you're in a rush or something like that, plan an alternate route. Make sure you're taking ample time. Get out an extra 5-10 minutes if you got to get to work. We try to minimize as much as we can these impacts, but it certainly will have an impact on traffic in the area.
It's interesting you bring it up today, and some pretty busy spots, like when they're working on places like Kenmount Road, and I'll mention that because that's where I work, is the thought about doing it at night. So I know there's a city bylaw that says you cannot do road work at night, but when we talk about rush hour implications, people getting to work in the morning and trying to get home in the evening, and some of the log jams created because of road work. Look, on one hand, we want the road work done. On the other hand, we complain when it delays our travel. So any conversation amongst you and your colleagues about whether or not a reconsideration of being able to do road work at night, which would be much easier for the working public?
Yeah, definitely something that I'm very much open to, and I know some of my colleagues also are. Part of the conversation, a lot of times, and a lot of folks ask, why don't we do A, B, C, or D? A lot of times it comes down to capacity issues, too. If you think about whether it's our crews, and we have limited resources, of course, with our crews, and so do local companies that we contract out. So there is always a capacity question, whether they actually have the equipment, the personnel who are trained, and the insurance and everything to be able to do it. So it's definitely a bit more of a broader conversation, I think, than what most people really think about when they think night traffic, and night construction, those types of things. Definitely, again, something I'm open to, but we also do have to be mindful of what that means for budget implications and timelines and all that.
Sure, and I think it would probably only be or most appropriate when we talk about the seriously high volume areas like Kenmount, like Topsail Road, like portions of Portugal Cove Road, Torbay Road, places like that. Because if I'm doing road work on Ennis Avenue over the course of the summer, whatever, there's ways to avoid Ennis Avenue. There's no big deal with slowing down. So that's why I throw it out there, because a caller yesterday called on that exact issue.
No, and that's totally fair and completely fair. Really, really is. And, you made a good point. If it's Ennis Avenue, if it's, Cowan Avenue, if it's these side streets, wherever it is, a lot of streets in this city are designed for people to also live on. So I did hear from one gentleman who, had a bit of a scary situation where there was line painting crews out, and a couple of cars just kind of, you're in a rush, I understand, but taking an extra few seconds just to get around traffic and make sure everyone's safe is really important. So be mindful just when you're out on the road. If you see crews are out there and they've got their signs, there's a reason that they're there, making sure that everyone's as safe as it can be. We've got pedestrians, cyclists. My mom walks the roadway quite a bit up at Cowan Heights, for example. We've got a lot of work up in there. Let's just keep those folks in mind as we're getting around. And, of course, you can leave 5 minutes early, and it'll make all the difference, and you won't have to worry about this.
Always will. Greg, appreciate the time.
Thanks so much, Patty. Always a pleasure. You take care.
You too. Bye-bye. That's Greg Noseworthy. He's the Ward 3 councillor here in the city. Let's take a break. When we come back, John wants to talk about how and where the candidates are advertising, and then whatever you want to talk about right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 4. John, you're on the air.
Hey, Patty. Good morning, and thanks for having me on again.
No problem.
So last week we were discussing St. John's social media page. We're directing personal campaign ads to Danny Breen.
And that's been removed and corrected.
Yes, within 2 hours, actually, it was taken down, and I respect that they did that. I appreciate that very much. But today I'm calling in about a similar circumstance. So, I was driving down the road the other day and at Topsail Road, and I seen that Ron Ellsworth has his campaign ads on the Metrobus.
Okay.
And I know anybody can rent that space, but however, it is city property. The Metrobus is owned by the city, and I heard other candidates are not allowed to even rent the community center for their campaign. So I don't see how this is a conflict of interest, in my opinion.
Well, how so, though? Because, if we're talking about advertising, let's just say campaign signs, unless it's on my lawn and my private property, the rest of the property is the city property. So to use your analogy, they would be advertising on city property regardless of how we spin it, whether it's on a billboard, on a private sector building, because... Oh, well, that's not a good example. But in the easement, say, at going on to Canaz Hill, that's city property, same as Metrobus.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that I think everyone should be able to. But when candidates are not allowed to rent out a community center for their campaign, because it is, and the reason they can't is because it's city property. So therefore, I don't understand how candidates can rent out city property space like the Metrobus. Do you see what I'm saying? It doesn't line up. Why can't candidates rent out their community centers or any city property to have a campaign? Because I know you're allowed to put signs on city property, but you're not allowed to rent out a community center. So how can you rent out space on the Metrobus that's owned by the city?
Who hasn't been able to rent a community centre? And it sounds a little bit surprising to me that a municipal candidate would have the capacity to rent a community centre for any extended amount of time. So is there one candidate or another that says they have been able to or told they weren't allowed? I'm just curious because I'll follow up with them.
It's actually in the municipal bylaws. You can pull it up.
Oh, okay. I didn't look at municipal bylaws on that.
Yeah, and so I don't know. That one is that one's up for debate, I guess. And to segue on to town halls and community centers. Your previous caller mentioned about the new Muse Community Center, which is being opened up, and I think that's a great thing for the community. Absolutely, it has been delayed now for over a year, but I find it very suspect that your previous caller failed to mention that it is opening up on this September the 15th, which is the day that the ballots go out. I find it very suspect that your previous caller forgot to mention that.
What's suspect about that, though? Sorry.
That the grand opening of the new Muse Community Center and the ribbon cutting ceremony by Danny Breen and Ron Ellsworth and other councillors had that plan on September 15th, the day that the ballots come in the mail. Right? I find that very suspect.
Fair enough, even though the new Muse Centre is way, way behind schedule. So had it been open on their own determined schedule, it would have been so far ahead of the elections that it wouldn't even be a blink on the radar, I don't think, or a blip on the radar, pardon me. But that's a fair point. I hadn't even considered that. So that's the date the ballots actually go out, is the 15th, because I think the election is the 2nd of October, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, okay.
But you can send as long as you're registered to vote, you can send out your ballots on the 15th. That's the day that you can start voting, the same day that the grand opening of the new Muse Community and the ribbon ceremony. And I understand the staff makes mistakes. I mean, the staff has a lot to do down at City Hall. They have, they're up to their eyes. Now, I understand that, right? But I just find it a little bit dirty how the grand opening is planned now for that day. I mean, in the middle of a campaign, I don't think that anything like that should take place. It could have happened in August, or it could have happened on October 3rd. Do you know what I mean? I just find it very suspicious. And I'm not saying that they did it on purpose, but to me, it gives a perception to the public that, because when they go and cut the ribbons and have their ceremony, it's indirectly promoting their own campaign. Because you see where I'm getting at?
I guess so, but let me just bounce this off you. If folks in the area are happy enough to see a new Muse Centre built and opened on the 15th, and this has long been coming, does that date and a bit of press coverage, you think that sways vote one way or the other? Because this has been planned and been under construction for years.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a good question. That's a good question. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But
I'm not so sure. I'm just bouncing it off you because I think it's an interesting point you make.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to bring it up because, again, that's a good question. I don't know if it would sway voters or if it wouldn't. Right, but during a campaign election, it just seems like they can hold off for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Now, I'm not saying they should do that. I'm saying that they could have had it planned for October 3rd after the election. It's 2 more weeks. Like you said, it's been in construction for years. What's 2 more weeks?
Fair enough. It is an interesting observation. And I didn't even know when the ballots were going out from the city of St. John's, but fair ball, John. Anything else you'd like to talk about this morning while we have you?
Oh no, that's it. I appreciate you having me on again, and I'll stay tuned in.
I appreciate that, and thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Yeah, advertising, like for starters, the whole campaign sign issue. I don't know what you think about campaign signs. Like, it doesn't really ruffle my feathers. I don't really care. But the placement of some of the signs is a problem. Some of them really do get in the way of your line of vision to look both ways when you're trying to make a traffic maneuver. We should be really careful on that front. So, and then, of course, it's the concept of cleaning up your signs, taking them down, putting them away very shortly after an election comes and goes. I think the rules say 72 hours, but we know that plenty of candidates don't abide by it. So anyway, there's a science to campaign signs. For better or worse, they figured it out. You know, whether it be placement and size and color and fonts and whether or not you should have a photograph or not, there's a lot that goes into, well, maybe not for every candidate, municipally, provincially, or federally, but for those with a bit of a bankroll and strategists on board, which I'm not suggesting is part of the municipal candidates necessarily, but you never know. Let's take a break. We did make mention of the bottom of the 9 o'clock hour about the number of days that have passed since the House of Assembly passed a variety of different resolutions. Let me give it to you one more time to set up our next guest. And let's see here. 90 days since the House of Assembly resolution for immediate creation of a disability advocate. Over 1,300 days since the Accessibility Act in force and zero standards in place. Join us right after this break as the Executive Director at the Coalition of Persons with Disabilities, Newfoundland and Labrador. That's Nancy Reid. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Just one of those reminders that because I didn't bring it up doesn't mean we can't talk about it. You know, there's many issues going on, and if it's of a concern to you and you want to talk about it on the show, we can do that. The two specific references in one really harshly written email is, yes, just very recently, the Israeli Defense Forces have begun phase one of taking over Gaza City, which, of course, has been receiving international condemnation. And then we're talking about the pathway to peace in Ukraine. And overnight, it's being reported that it was the third most active night of drone and missile strikes in Ukraine this year. So, yes, we can talk about those controversial and very traumatic issues if you're so inclined. Let's go to line number one and say good morning to the Executive Director at COD&L. That's the Coalition of Persons with Disabilities. That's Nancy Reid. Hi, Nancy. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you today?
Great today. How about you?
I'm great, thank you. Patty, I want to say thank you for bringing this up this morning in your preamble. I appreciate that folks can come on and speak about anything and everything within reason, but I really appreciate you bringing this forward today. This is something that matters for people with disabilities and for the general population of this province. And I'd like to speak for a minute around the movement of the disability advocate position. We've spoken about it many times in this arena and others. And I would like to give a little update as to what's happened over the summer in that space from my viewpoint.
Okay.
So the disability advocate has certainly been something since it was brought as a motion and unanimously supported some months ago in the House. The minister responsible since then has met with us as individual organizations, disability organizations, and specifically, I'll speak for my organization, the Coalition of Persons with Disabilities. We've had several conversations with the minister responsible over the summer. That would be then Minister Korab, and Minister Korab is no longer in that position, but I'll talk about that in just a second if I could. The Premier actually also met with us in early June, and we had a short meeting, but a productive one, where at the Coalition we were able to meet, certainly bring our concerns forward, our concerns around the importance of this being done right and done in a time frame that was acceptable and appropriate. The Premier was very receptive to that, tasked the minister responsible for further communications in that way, and we've had great follow-up since then. As I said, Minister Korab has been working with us in that space over the summer until last week when he was moved to a different department in government, and you know I appreciate so greatly the work that he's done with us directly on this file. I had the opportunity to speak with Minister late last week, maybe Thursday, maybe Friday, whatever day it was, and just after he had learned of his position change. And he assured me that he would not just pass the file, but really work with Minister Davis, the new minister responsible, to ensure that the messages, that the voice that we at the coalition and other network organizations brought forward to him was understood by the new minister. One of the most important things that Minister Korab did was to publicly state the importance of the disability advocate being an independent office, so that it is not housed under what was suggested it's up for some time, that it might be housed under the seniors advocate. Minister Korab was very public and open, and was actually on VOC, and I saw it on a story where he publicly said this would not be housed under the seniors advocate role. So that's really reassuring for us. It's something that our community has been adamant about through the whole process, and we're really pleased to know that it's going to be a standalone office.
Yeah, it was kind of a ham-fisted suggestion in the first place. It kind of implied that only seniors might be part of the disabled community. There was just something that didn't sit well with anybody, and I'm glad that Minister Korab spoke to it the way he did, because it just makes sense. So this is good news, and you and I have kind of broached this in the past, but we know the mandate of the Child and Youth Advocate. We understand the mandate of the Seniors Advocate. We also understand the restrictions. They're dealing with, let's just talk Seniors Advocates because you just mentioned Susan Walsh's office. They deal with systemic and broad stroke issues as opposed to championing one particular individual or another, which I don't know where you stand on that, but if I had the ability to take one individual case and to pursue it for change in policy or support or action, then inevitably other people in the disabled community would be facing very similar circumstances. So we get to address broad systemic issues, even if we just put a face to an issue, which I think has a bit more impact. What do you think?
I'm in agreement. At the Coalition, we also do systemic advocacy, and we at the Coalition really appreciate and think that the disability advocate must consider systemic advocacy, and that's the primary role. However, in order to actually understand where the barriers are, what that looks like, you really need to be able to investigate the individual lives, the stories, the barriers, the challenges, and the successes of persons with disabilities in the province, not just the large group, but individuals in that space. So we've spoken to the minister responsible around the importance of us in recognizing that this disability advocate be someone with an investigative authority, so that persons' stories can come to that office, to the staff, and sometimes those stories will get investigated so that we can understand better what the lives, what the living, what the realities of persons with disabilities are throughout this province of Newfoundland and Labrador. And it's only then that we can really understand where the commonalities are, where people align, things that are of a systemic nature, and address the barriers, the systems, the policies, the procedures that actually are making things difficult for people from a systemic lens. So I think, the disability advocate must be both systemic, but able to investigate and look at things individually in order to really understand where those systemic barriers lie.
Yeah, because we can talk about a systemic barrier, say, for instance, but if you can put some individual case to it, here's how it impacts this individual on a day-to-day basis, that makes people think a little deeper. I think it has a little bit more punch or impact when we talk about, this is what it really means. All the broad stroke stuff, I get why that's important. I get why that might be the mandate inside the Seniors Advocate's office. But those individual stories are so powerful when compared to the headlines of a very broad stroke issue. So I think we're in the same church and pew on that one. So anything else on the disability advocate front? Because I also want to talk about the Accessibility Act and what kind of standards need to be put in place.
Sure. Well, I guess one other thing around the disability advocate, we see this as so integral to ensuring everything else is done in this province for persons with disabilities. I will say that this week, actually just yesterday, I received an email from Minister Davis's office with an invitation to meet him to start this conversation around the disability advocate. So I'm really pleased with that. I'm certainly confident that Minister Korab's work with us will translate into his work, and I'm looking forward to actually seeing this happen quickly, but more importantly, appropriately. That's where we need to be.
Fair enough. And, people will hang their hat on the word immediate when the resolution was passed in the House of Assembly, but immediate in politics doesn't mean tomorrow necessarily so.
We need to ensure that legislation is created to do this well. If that takes us a few months, I'm willing to say that I'm comfortable with that if at the end of the day we've actually got something that matters and will make change going forward. We've been waiting a long time for this. A few more months is not going to be the end of it all.
Yeah, because getting it done right is as important as getting it done quickly. Let's talk about the Accessibility Act. And there's one advocate who tags me on a bunch of social media posts talking about the standards that need to be put in place. And this person says it's 1,300 days since the Accessibility Act was implemented, but yet the standards that was going to come on the heels have not been done. What can you tell us about that?
I know very little. Honestly, it's not something that I've had a lot of focus on over recent days. We've been dealing more around the disability advocate. But to the best of my knowledge, there is very little movement. I'm not seeing much. Certainly nothing new is being posted. It's not public. I understand that there are some committees. I will be fully disclosing and say that I've made application to many of those and have never been given the opportunity to participate in those spaces. So I don't know. I know that in earlier, I guess more than a couple of years ago, some of the individuals within the board had to remove themselves for various reasons, and health reasons really. And so I'm not sure what the status is of the board and their ability to meet on a regular basis right now. I don't know. Again, I'd like to say that I think the disability advocate would be key to ensuring that these things don't fall off the rails. We've got somebody in place when we have the disability advocate who can say, okay, we're missing this. This is supposed to be done. Where is it? What's happening? We need to be able to have somebody with the authority to really hold folks accountable and be representative of that. At our community organization level, we've been saying it for many years, many months, and it really just does not make the change that we need to see.
Fair enough. Nancy, I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. That's Nancy Reid, and she, of course, is the Executive Director at the Coalition of Persons with Disabilities NL. All right, let's get a break in, and of course, when we come back, the topic entirely up to you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Mentioned off the top of the show that the rumbles were that the Prime Minister was going to be in town today. Richard Duggan just passed this in to me. The PMO's office has said, unfortunately, they've been held back. It won't be in Newfoundland and Labrador today. The plan was to be here, but something changed on their end, so not here. That doesn't mean that the issues that we broached off the top of the show about, number one, why come, and number two, to talk about what? Because I put out a few that I think people think about is, whether or not there's going to be some complications for the Memorandum of Understanding with the East-West Energy Corridor. And I'll admit, of course, that's been discussed for decades. You can trace that all the way back to Diefenbaker. But some of the more notable ones is maybe conversation about the fixed link. Not because I say so, but because the federal government themselves have talked about it and referred to it as a nation-building project. And once again, someone wanted some actual explanation about a comment that I've made a few times about Beta Nord and Article 82, and that's of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Okay. The issue here is hundreds of millions of dollars. So when the country signed on to it, we basically agreed, and this has never been used anywhere ever on Earth. This would be the first time if Beta Nord ever goes ahead. So what it basically says is that it allows countries like Canada and what they refer to as broad margin states to have larger than, let's see if I get this right, larger than normal continental shelves to operate to extract offshore oil in this case beyond the 200-mile nautical limit, the nautical mile limit. So basically, royalties will be taken and paid to developing nations for a variety of things. So whether or not people think that's a good thing or a bad thing, the fact of the matter is the country signed on to it. So the argument became between the province and the federal government as to who would be responsible. Because full well, Equinor, the potential operator of the Beta Nord project, they're not going to pay it. Well, certainly they don't want to, and that could be a stumbling block. So the disagreement between the province and the feds was pretty fundamental. The province said that the federal government should pay that money because the country signed on. The province didn't sign on. So that's a fair argument. So when I put it out there, is the possibility that in an effort to bring Beta Nord closer to reality, and that's if you're a supporter of the industry or you think not another drop of oil should ever be extracted, it's up to you. We're just talking about the dollars and cents of this proposal. So whether or not the feds will get involved, financially speaking, regarding that particular Article 82 that the country signed on to a long time ago. Let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Gerald. You're on the air.
Morning, Paddy.
Good morning to you.
I'm outside my comfort zone. I'm an old man, so I'm a little bit distracted. But the mackerel fishery.
Yep.
I've got a few observations to make of that. Apparently, there's places teeming with mackerels. Is that correct?
I've heard reports from several different bays where they see exactly that, the mackerel teeming at the surface of the water in huge numbers.
And we are forbidden to take the mackerel?
There's a bait fishery.
There is a bait fishery.
Yep.
But for the common fisherman, you can't harvest that.
No.
That crop. And do you know what the reason is for this?
Well, a couple of things. So there's no mackerel-specific scientist at DFO, I'm told, by the union. And when the last data was compiled, it showed that the species was in a precarious position. And so consequently, remember, there was not even a bait fishery there a few years ago. There was a full-on moratorium. And unlike other stocks that we refer to as straddle stocks, like mackerel, the Americans still had a reduced commercial fishery, but we had a full ban on. So they were talking about strength of stock, but I don't even know if there's updated science to say whether or not we should have changed our tune on the mackerel fishery this year.
So do you accept that from DFO?
The science?
Do you accept those figures and so on?
Well, the last ones that they released did indeed show that mackerel was in a bad spot, but that's years ago. So what we need now...
I'd like to know how they know. Apparently they don't do any of their own sentinels or whatever. I think they're, just my personal opinion, that they really don't know. These are the same people that govern the collapse of our fishery. We went from the biggest fishery in the world down to a moratorium. These are the same people. They don't do surveys. I don't think they know. They make educated guesses and call it science and hide behind the science, as far as what I see. But your own eyes, if you got common sense, you can see a place is full of fish, and the people that can make a living from that fish are prohibited from. But the people doing the prohibition, they're not affected in any way. That's a fool setup. And as a matter, just on that vein, where is the union on this? We got the fisheries have a union. Here's this absurd regulation, and they would take it. So that's a union without teeth. That's not what the airline people did up there when they went on strike and they were ordered back. They said go to hell.
Well, in fairness, the union, including the president on street on this program, asking for the government to reopen the commercial mackerel fishery. They had meetings with Joanne Thompson, who's the federal fisheries minister. So they've been pretty vocal about needing this fishery reopened. Whether or not that's forceful enough for people's liking, I'll leave that up to people like yourself, Gerald. But they have been speaking to this issue publicly. And Dwan Street, whether or not people support her as the president, she doesn't pull any punches.
Well, I don't know. Being vocal is one thing, but taking action is something else. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've never seen the Fisheries Union take any action. They'll do talk about it, consult, and worry about it and so on. But I haven't. A real union will do what a union does, and that's make trouble for the bureaucrats or the company when it's required.
Yeah.
And, Paddy, look. We're no longer governed now. These rules come out. We got a bureaucracy that enforce rules and regulation on us, and we take it like sheep. I'm really disappointed in what we've become.
What would action look like to you? Because remember when we were talking about free enterprise and those types of things, and the price-setting panel for things like shrimp and crab and those types of things. So they actually shut down the provincial government's ability to deliver a budget one day. Remember that? So
I don't. But you know what? Like I said, this is not my role. But I'm just commenting on what I see as a citizen. I'm not up on the exact detail. I'm not in the fishery. Understand?
Yeah, nor am I trying to lecture you or school you, but I was just curious what you mean about action, because it's only like 2 or 3 years ago where Confederation parking lot was full. And that was budget day, and the government couldn't deliver a budget because of the action taken by, whether it be the John Efforts of the world or the union or the FFAW in this case. But that was an example of action. Would you have another example? Like, are you talking about straight up civil disobedience, just going out and catching the mackerel and be damned?
Yes, whatever. We want more action. Close, blockade the Department of Fisheries. Take action. A real response. It's out of my venue to suggest what I know what I would do is say, but if to comment further, I would want to be part of that group. I'm making an observation from the outside, just as an old man and a citizen.
A point taken and understood. You're not alone. I hear comments like this a lot, both on the air and in my email inbox, what have you. The fact that we're so governed. And I think I hear more of it from people, just everyday Joes. Like, for instance, with the recreational groundfish fishery. I mean, once again this year, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, from the 28th of June to the 1st September, then from the 20th of September, 28th of September, without the ability to go out. And, some people are inevitably going to abuse it, but they already abuse it with the given rules, as opposed to if I wanted some cod for supper tonight and I live in Riverhead, St. Mary's Bay, I can't go out and get one. It's just, there's a lot to it.
Well, see, you can go out and get one, see, but you're not willing to take the consequence. People should be willing to go out and challenge, take the consequence, challenge that in court, like the chap in Nova Scotia did with the prohibition on movement. He went out deliberately and got a $28,000 fine. He's going to you can't, as a people, we can't just be sheep. They can tell us to do what way. You can catch a fish on Monday, but you can't kill it Tuesday. So that's absurd.
No argument for me.
We become to accept that, Paddy?
No argument for me on the food fishery. I think it's ridiculous.
Well, not only ridiculous, but the flip side of that is the people that accept it.
Ouch.
I was born in the old Newfoundland, and the captain, Captain Guy Earl and so on. Try that on them and see what you get back. The old people, like I say, it's what we have become. Feeble and weak. I'm disgusted with us, really, in a way,
Yeah, we'll see if individuals be willing to take the consequences, because there will be consequences. And Buddy in Nova Scotia, I don't know what's going to become of that. The legal analysis I've seen is that government absolutely has the authority, even if there might be an abuse of authority, he's going to end up stuck with that fine. On that front...
the thing is, excuse me, Paddy,
no problem.
Do they have that authority? Maybe. What happened to our charter rights? What happened to our charter rights now when all these prohibitions, you couldn't move during the fire, people couldn't protect their property? Look at the people, look at the medical services that were interrupted. There's all kinds of consequences that flow from these restrictions of movement, and it's done with impunity. The police will do it. They'll shut down the highway for any excuse they want to. I hear it every day. The highway is shut down because of this or because of that. Now, granted, there are circumstances where that's warranted. I'm not silly enough to know that. But they'd use that as an excuse to make their job easier. That's what it seems to me.
Well, I guess
there's no regard for the general public, that people go about their business that can be life-threatening to them, and it's shut down with impunity.
I guess it kind of depends what we're talking about. There are certain things where you expect there to be some restrictions for a variety of valid reasons. There's other clear examples, like I've said many times here. The issue regarding the ATV ban, I didn't really have an issue with it. If I'm told I can't go for a walk in the woods, then I have a major issue with it.
Well, banning the ATV is a vehicle, but banning you as an individual is something else. If you wanted to walk in the woods, in bare buff naked, and you walk, can you start a fire? But you can't go.
Depends how hot you are, I suppose.
Well, I'm just go reductio ad absurdum, to use the old Latin on,
I understand.
Anyway, that's my rant, Paddy.
Appreciate the rant, Gerald. Thanks for your time, sir.
You're welcome.
Take care. Bye-bye. Let's see here. Let's take a break. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Walter, you're on the air.
Hi, good day, Paddy. How are you, sir?
Not too bad, I suppose. How about you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much. Just a little brief chat with you, Paddy, about something that is not most colorful thing to talk about, and some people shy away from it. But that is about the necessity of having a will when you pass. I had the opportunity to be the executor of my wonderful mother and fantastic stepdad's estate. I had never done it before, and it's a long process. So anybody who may be asked by a family member or a friend to be there to the executor, it is a lot of work. There's no doubt about that. And in our situation, there was the mortgage was more than what the house was worth, and there was a few surprises there. So if anybody is planning on being an executor, now that I've finished mine, it took about 3 years, and everything is done. Everything is taken care of. It's a detailed kind of deal. The most important advice I can give to someone who is going to be an executor is to keep a detailed diary every day of who you speak to, what the subject was, the time, and the date, because you'll require that. You'll need that, whether it's a month or a week down the road. And my process was 3 years. It wasn't a month delay and then 2 weeks. It's every day, every 2 days, every 3 days. Somebody wants something from you, and then I can go back and say, I talked to this person, talked to that person. And at the end of the process, my diary is 3.5 inches thick. And that's 8 by 11 paper. So to be able to go back and recall something that happened 6 months ago might be a little bit difficult, but it's easier, a heck of a lot easier when you can actually see it on paper. And as an executor, until you've satisfied the CRA, until you've satisfied any bank cards or any loans, any mortgages, etc., don't disperse anything to anybody, whether it's family member or friend, and mom said I could have this, pop said I could have that. To protect yourself, that's a very important thing. Protect yourself by just asking for patience, asking for people to just let me do my deal, and it's perfectly okay, of course, for any beneficiary to say, hey, keep me up to date on this and this and this, and they're absolutely in their right to do that. But as executor, protect yourself at all times, because while you're not responsible for any financial liabilities as executor, if you start giving things out before you were set, especially CRA, you may be held responsible for it, if that makes any sense.
It does. For people who have very straightforward assets and cash and whatever it might be, you can buy a ready to fill out will, you go on Amazon and buy one. But if you have anything that might add some additional complications, it's really worth doing it the right way. Don't take the cheap way out when all you might do is, upon your passing, create a major headache for your executor, major discrepancies and arguments amongst the beneficiaries, major liabilities legally and financially. So I guess it really depends on the individual, what you have and what you should do about it. But if you have a very, very straightforward life, just fill it out. Just get it completed, get it notarized, and on you go. If you have any complications in this world, I know it's expensive to deal with a lawyer, and I know not everyone has that capacity, but you will save a lot of people in your sphere, your family and otherwise, a lot of headaches after you die.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that any better. We took funds from our own savings. There was nothing left really, unfortunately, when they passed. So we probated the will, which gave me as executor the same responsibilities as the person. Of course, my stepdad Ben was the person who passed second. So I had the same responsibility as Ben did, to go into the bank or to take money out or to buy something to repair the home, to get it ready for sale. So yes, you're absolutely correct. And the main thing, Patty, is just ask for patience from any beneficiary. Work with the banks. Even getting the driver's licenses sent back and the MCP cards and the reward cards that they might have and paying utility bills. And it's a lot of work. So just ask them for patience. It will benefit everybody in the end, because nothing is a bigger killer than stress. And if you ask for patience, things will go a lot smoother and get it all done in a professional amount of time.
Yeah, and fair enough. It's an important role to take. I'm not so sure that I'd be volunteering myself to be an executor of anybody's estate, especially if there's any real complications, because just imagine trying to deal with the various beneficiaries. And that's one of the problems. There's a reason why I brought it up off the top of the show. Regardless of legal or financial responsibilities, executor negligence, just imagine what that might mean for the beneficiaries. The longer things drag out with trying to reconcile debts, distribution of assets, dealing with CRA, the beneficiaries over time will become more and more anxious, become more and more angry, and then there you go, you're in the middle of a firestorm. So there's lots of reasons to try to make sure that this gets done right. Walter, anything else while we have you this morning?
No, just very quickly, while it was a lot of work, an executor, if there is any money left over at the end, which in our case it absolutely wasn't, the executor can, get ballpark 5%, so you do get some sort of payment from it. Now, a lot of people will not take that because you're doing it for your loved ones, so that's not even an issue. But as much harder work it was, and very stressful as it was, I would definitely do it again for a loved one because you want it done right, and the most satisfying thing you can ever do is make certain that when someone passes, that their name is in the clear.
Appreciate the time, Walter. Thank you.
Have a great day. Thank you, Paddy.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
A couple of quick notes before we get to the 11 o'clock news. Okay, so it was all bad enough when we were getting license plates made elsewhere, shipped into the province, distributed, and lo and behold, the paint didn't stick. So we all saw it, the peeling paint, and for some license plates that are still out there, you can't see anything unless you're up close and personal to be able to identify the bumps that signify the letters and numbers. That was bad enough. Now, apparently, and I wasn't aware of this until someone sent me a note this morning, there's temporary license plates being issued. There's an issue with the vendor that supplies the license plate. So now people, if you're getting a new license plate, you're getting a piece of paper. And you got to put it in your back window. I think it's on the left-hand corner. So the temporary license plates are only good for 120 days. When they get the new license plate, they mail it out to you. But here's a couple of complicating factors with that. We already know that we're told you can't put a cover over your license plate. You have to get it replaced if the paint is peeling or gone in full. And it's free of charge. The speed cameras. So you know full well people are going to do what they can to avoid getting ticketed. Again, I know I remain in the minority and I don't really care, I think they're a good idea. Because we got to slow people down. It's complete madness. Remind ourselves of the fact that over a 3-month period last year in Paradise and Mount Pearl, just 2 communities, 94,000 citations were sent out. Now, they were just warnings, no fine attached, but 94,000 examples of people being caught going at least 11 kilometres over the posted speed limit. Had there been fines, we'd pay for this pretty quickly around here. So, but the speed cameras, so people have got to get those license plates replaced. And there should be a conscientious effort to make sure that that happens. And then for people with the paper license plate, you can't read that. They are at no risk of getting picked up by a speed camera. So I don't know what the supply issue is on the vendor side, but Steve on Twitter made me aware of it. So it does complicate a couple of different things. What happens will the Motor Vehicle Registration Department, after they know they sent me or gave me a paper temporary license plate, it expires in 120 days, but I still don't have my metal license plate that I can affix to the back of my vehicle, will they automatically send me a new one? Do I got to go into Mount Pearl and get one? Do I have to send an email to request a new valid paper plate? Strange little stuff there that goes on sometimes. All right, let's see here. Let's check it out on Twitter before we get to the break. We're VOCM Open Line. You can follow us there. The email address is openline@vocm.com. I think we've got a conversation coming up from one of the members of the opposition talking about the most recent economic update. I've brought it up here a couple of times because it's worth noting. If people want to pluck out what we'll refer to as encouraging news, housing starts, retail spending, employment numbers, they're not too bad. But the deficit has more than doubled. The borrowing is going to remain at $4.1 billion this year. But there was certainly a lack of detail about a variety of things. I'm not going to, speak for whoever's planning on calling here representing the PC party, but even when they talked about additional pressures in healthcare, that one jumped off the page to me. Look, we know there's a lot of pressures in healthcare, and it's the most expensive department in the province, the most expensive line item in the budget. But what actual additional healthcare pressures are we talking about? Like, what does that mean? So I think it's Lynn Paddock maybe planning on calling to ask those questions, but that one specifically to me was, okay, what does that mean? Let's go ahead and take a break for the news. When we come back, tons of time for you. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1 and say good morning to the PC member for Bay Burke Green Bay, also the Shadow Minister of Finance. That's Lynn Paddock. Shadow Minister Paddock, you're on the air.
Thanks, Patty. Thanks for having me. I like I said, just give a talk with regards to the fiscal update from this week, or I should say the incomplete fiscal update from this week. And before I guess, get into some of the points there, I would like to highlight with regard to the wildfires, because that was highlighted as an expense pressure. And, all of us, my heart included, breaks for the people of the Bay de Verde Peninsula, to lose your home and not knowing what's coming next. And then as a former senior military officer who spent a good portion of his career dealing humanitarian operation, I think it's been pretty uplifting. The battle zone efforts of the first responders, the firefighters, and then the volunteers. So on the wildfire pressure alone, Patty, I want to highlight, because I don't believe it was highlighted this week, on where we sit with regards to disaster financial assistance arrangement. So that's a program with the federal government that we can apply for. So that will, we can trigger that when our costs are over $2.1 million. And it's pretty clear for the forest fires this year, our costs are going to be over $2.1 million. And that's based on a id count of $3.84 per person. And that program will cover not just the fire response, but, restoration as well. So homes, infrastructure, et cetera. So I guess to reassure, in particular, a lot of the residents of the Bay de Verde Peninsula and really the province as a whole, is that we have a mechanism through the disaster financial assistance arrangement to significantly lower the burden that's going to be on us for the wildfire response and recovery this season.
It's pretty tricky criteria to be eligible for the Federal Disaster Relief Fund. I mean, I know it came to bear when we talked about Port aux Basques and Fiona and what have you, but will it be applied to these wildfires? I think that's yet to be determined, to be honest. And I guess I should have added it to my list of things that the Prime Minister might be in town for. Of course, the delays means he's not here today, but that's an important question as to whether or not we're going to qualify for relief in full or in part from that fund. That fund has been drawn on more in the last 4 years than ever before. A remarkable amount of money coming out of that fund. So that's a good question. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, it is. But what I'm saying is I've gone through the parameters for it. And the threshold there is once you're over, for us this year, once we're over 2.1 million, so that's updated every year based on population and based on their formula, then we would be eligible for some relief.
Right. Okay. Plus, just I want to add to that, because this important point is I don't know, and maybe you do, about how the costs are borne, say, for instance, with presence of the military, whether it be water bombers from Ontario and Quebec, those types of things which inevitably are going to factor in, but who's bearing those costs, I think, really goes a long way to hitting eligibility thresholds. Do you know, by chance?
So then it would depend on, like a military person, that having been a senior military officer dealing humanitarian operations. So your fixed cost for the individual would be borne by the military. It would be incremental costs, food, lodging, all of that stuff would then come part into that disaster relief.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Let's get into the fiscal update. I wanted to give some time for that.
Yeah, no, thanks, Patty. And, my big issue with this, or there's a number of issues, it's pretty limited. So, there was no departmental level detail provided. There was a short 4-page overview. I mean, if you look at what companies do for a quarterly update and what we got from the government, it was pretty lacking. They highlighted a number of expense pressures. Like I said, we fully understand the wildfires, but what in addition to the wildfires? So those pressures were not detailed or an approximate value given. And then, we've had a number of Liberal announcements over the summer. None of that has been detailed as well in this fiscal update. We don't know where we sit with the tobacco settlement. Has it been received? We're 5 months into the year. They should be able to now give an estimate out to the end of the year. We don't know with regards to the contingency fund. That was set up for tariffs. So again, what has been applied against that contingency fund? And the issue with the contingency fund is anytime you draw into it, you're adding to the deficit.
Yeah, the contingency fund, so we're referring to $200 million, which was set aside for tariff impacts. The minister was asked that question, and again, I can't put words in anyone's mouth, but the answer went something like this, that $25 million of that contingency fund has been used for wildfire supports, and the other $175 million has not been used.
Yeah, but as she was also saying, and that's what I'm saying, we don't have the departmental level overview, is that there was additional expense pressures exist, and some of that included ELT. So that's what I'm saying. We have a very limited overview with regards to this fiscal update. You know, back in April, we argued, I pleaded with the Minister of Finance to adjust the budget based on the price for Brent at that time and the Canadian dollar, because in April when Trump started bringing in the tariffs, the geopolitical situation changed. Now, I take no joy in being right, but I asked him again in May with regards to the plan during budget estimates with regards to in-year controllership. So this week with the fiscal update, there's no plan with regards to cost containment, government expenditures, or even Paddy, potential revenue acceleration.
What would that mean?
Well, we have a case in point. Our side has been lobbying for a mackerel fishery. You know, a mackerel fishery is 300 plus million. You know, we need to be aggressive, have a mission focus, not just with regards to managing the budget with regards to cost containment, but also accelerating every opportunity that is in front of us.
Yeah. I just want to go back to big tobacco for a second, because unlike other provinces, like for instance, Manitoba didn't book any of the compensation money in this recent budget. Other provinces did what we should be doing, is go to the Auditor General for consultation about how it can be done. I know you're allowed to do this based on the accounting rules and general practice. Whether or not you should be doing it is a different question. So the sum, of course, it was $32.5 billion was the full sum. It was broken across the provinces and territories. That added up to about $24.7 billion, if memory serves. About 38%, I think, was the upfront payment, leaving the rest to be paid over the course of decades. And that's after tax income until the 32.5 is paid in full. But IF does a lot of heavy lifting here. There's reason to understand that these two big tobacco companies may not even have the capacity to pay the remainder of the $24.7 billion, which makes it suspect to add it all into one calendar year to address the deficit. And now we know in the economic update that the deficit, even though we included all the big tobacco money, has more than doubled.
Right. So our portion from a revenue side was $520 million.
Yeah, 38% up front.
Fees, yeah, our legal fee expense was roughly $125 million.
Yeah.
So it's that roughly $375 million is what we would receive in a tobacco settlement. So the provinces or the Liberals have booked it all for this fiscal year. We might not even receive anything this fiscal year. And then there was only, if it was paid out this year or started to pay out, we would only receive approximately 60%, and the other 40% over 30 years. They're handcuffing all future governments with regards to this over the next 30 years.
Yes, if the money doesn't flow. And again, if is probably the most impactful two-letter word in the English dictionary. Just an example, and I've already stated that I don't think we should have done what we've done here. But like back in 2019, when there was monies from the Atlantic Accord, the new arrangements under the Atlantic Accord, and that of course runs until 2056, I'm pretty sure, all of that monies that flowed over the course of years was booked in one calendar year, one fiscal year as well. Now, there's a difference there because that money comes from very secure sources as opposed to big tobacco.
Correct. So that was from the federal government.
That's right.
This here is from a private company. Who knows where they're going to be in 5 or 10 years, let alone 30.
Yeah, fair ball.
Right. So, your assessment is right. And why they didn't get an overview from the Auditor General is beyond me. The residents of our province deserve full transparency and openness with regards to managing the books.
Yeah. I think regardless if we're going into an election or not, and maybe I'm just a bit of a wonk, but I like detail. It's hard to just, one of my favorite bedtime material reading, budget day, is estimates. Now, it is arduous and it's a nuisance to have to dig in like that. But the general public, we shouldn't have to do it. Not every voter or taxpayer should have to go to estimates to get detailed breakdowns. Whether it be the fall economic update or by legislation, we need an update that we just got this week, is give us the departmental overlay, as you rightfully point out. Give us some actual detail. It's one thing to tell me pressure on the healthcare system. We all know there's pressure on the healthcare system, but what in particular? How much did we spend or decrease in spending on a travel agency nurse? Things we can sink our teeth into, as opposed to there's pressure. Yeah, there's pressure. Everybody understands pressure, but what kind of pressure? Because there's different pressure if I shake a bottle of Coke versus drop a Mento into a bit of Diet Pepsi or spending on healthcare. So I'd like to have more.
Yeah, and Patty, we're on the same song sheet here. And the other point I'd like to note with what I've seen, since I've been in the House, is the use of sole source contracts. Like, I was in a war zone in the Middle East. We still use competitive contracting. Like, the only time we need to be using sole source contracting is like now, dressing the Walfers in an emergency. The Comfort Inn was absolutely no reason for a sole source contract, and we got taken. The taxpayers of Newfoundland and Labrador got taken to the cleaners.
Now, I think I only gave a very quick glance to the email that includes your concerns here this morning, but I mean, even your party, didn't you guys release what you think is an annual cost to Comfort Inn? Because we all know it's around $21 million a year in the lease, but that's only for the lease. That's not for everything else that went into it, whether it be renovations and cost per person, which I think boiled down to, was it $181,000? I think is the number you guys were using. So I think we kind of have those numbers, don't we? Yeah, okay.
But we overpaid. We significantly overpaid. Well, and then when you overpaid here, you don't have money for, fire and emergency services, brush cutting, etc. And I'll leave you with this, Patty, as I said in the update as well, is, they knew the deficit situation was increasing, and yet they still voted themselves a secret bonus. It is gobsmacking.
Which thankfully went by the wayside. Nobody was going to stand for that. I mean, that is just, talk about the inability to read the room. And I don't care what party would have been involved. That's just completely unacceptable. And good on Hogan for rescinding it, but that doesn't change the fact that it was done.
Well, he hasn't fully rescinded it because who has received it and who hasn't paid it back?
We're only told one person at this moment in time. Yeah. I think it's around $33,000 through Andrew Parsons, right?
Yep.
Andrew Fury has come out publicly and said he did not receive any. So there's only a couple of examples of people who were even eligible for that monies at this point. Lynn, I appreciate the time. Anything else quickly before I have to get going?
No, that's good. Like I said, my concern, Patty, is they're continuing to downplay and deflect. We need true openness and transparency with the provincial treasury.
Let me ask you this very quickly before we go. Look, politicians and parties campaign on accountability and transparency all the time, regardless of where we're talking, the states, here, right across the country, is, let's just hypothetical. You guys win the next election, whenever that might be. How are we going to hold you to account? Because that's the trick the general public has, is the only accountability and transparency piece and opportunity we have is every 4 years or thereabouts, where we go to vote one government in or vote one government out. So, what am I going to do to hold you accountable? Say, for instance, if you're the Minister of Finance, Are you, if you're not fully transparent with me, can we ask for your resignation, or what's going to happen here? Because I think the general public is kind of tired of hearing buzzwords on the campaign trail. We need actual commitments and things we can hold you to account with.
So let me highlight one point there to what we have and our leader has committed to, and that's the House of Assembly being open more, and that's the place where we can have those debates with regards to public expenditures. And we have also committed to doing public procurement differently, and that is getting away from sole source contracts benefiting Liberal insiders.
Yeah, and I would hope that campaign finance reform is coming as well, to be honest. Lynn, I'm really late for the break, but I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks, Paddy.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Lynn Paddock, the PC member for Baybrook Green Bay. Yeah. Let's take a break. Mike wants to talk about the most recent shootings. Actually, a 21-year-old man is being charged with attempted murder for the shootings in Paradise over the weekend. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 2. Mike, you're on the air.
Hi, Paddy. How are you today?
Doing okay. How about you?
Pretty good, sir.
Good.
I just want to call in about shootings in the past several months. I mean, the one down East End where that young fella got shot, and the one out in Paradise that was recently a 21-year-old. The gun control and everything that's from the Newfoundland is unreal, even for what they have to show on the news and everything, for what they have to take off the streets and everything else. But you take those young people that's out there, obviously you got to be drugs involved and everything else. And to me, those people, if they're going to be charged and proven to be charged and everything else, I mean, their lives are ruined. And as far as I'm concerned, if any of those people do, or if they should get out on bail before they goes to court or whatnot, I think any people that's attracted to the public, they all should have ankle bracelets on them till they do go to court. And that's my take on that.
Yeah, and I will add the enhanced ankle bracelet conversation to those who are repeat offenders, allegations of domestic violence. Put that out there because the government actually promised that. Look, for starters, most of these violent criminals shouldn't get bail anyway. It's their right to apply for bail and argue it in court, but there's every good reason under the sun to think that someone who's got a gun that's been, has been alleged to have been blasting it off at buildings and vehicles in Paradise, there's a good conversation as to whether or not that person should get bail. Secondly, even if you read the news story, they talk about a lot of these gun-related calls that the police are getting is involving a criminal network within the metro region. So basically, if I read between that line, it's a small number of people creating the vast majority of the problem.
Absolutely.
And guaranteed it's got something to do with drugs.
Absolutely. And again, like I said, I think myself, the biggest reason they do get out on bail, obviously, is that for the most part, they got nowhere to put them.
Whether or not
Jails
people
are filled up and everything else,
you're right.
And
you know,
so I don't think. Sorry, Paddy.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. The issue.
Those people should be out on the street.
I'm not going to argue that point at all. But you're not wrong, and people don't want to hear this, but it's simply a fact. Is that there is a conversation about where do you put someone? I mean, somewhere in the neighborhood of 60% of those that are in HMP today are on remand. They haven't been convicted of anything. So whether when we build a new prison, we also build a remand center, that's maybe a conversation we can have. But you're right. Where do you put everybody?
Absolutely. And the other quick thing I want to speak about is that as far as this after the people that day after the young fella to get downtown.
Yep.
Casting those set 3 fires and everything, and now we got 3 charges of $50,000 coming against them. Now, in all reality, that's never going to be paid.
Nope.
And the one that was out Paddy's Pond, supposedly they got somebody for that. I think those people need to serve a lot of time, and I mean that just a couple of years. Those people need, for what damage they cost, and for the money that they cost the province, and for the people that lost their homes and everything else, those people should be locked up for a long, long, long time, if nothing else. That way, it'll make the next person think of causing a fire or getting caught and what they're going to get.
Yeah, paying the fine seems out of reach for a 20-year-old. So along with the fine, if you can't pay it, that comes with automatic jail time. And I don't even know if the legislation has addressed that formally quite yet. But when charges are arson with willful neglect or respect for human life, I think is how it's worded, that can come with a pretty hefty sentence, and so it should.
Yes, absolutely. And one quick thing, Paddy, I don't know if you heard it on the news, and that was happened up in Ontario. Apparently, some part of Ontario, I forget the name of the street that they said, Lynn Street or whatever it was. Anyway, this guy, apparently the police been looking for him. He's obviously, like I said, police been out searching for him and stuff like that. He broke into this house up there that was on the news. The man that woke up and heard like somebody out in his house or a disturbance, he got up, two of them got an altercation. The police showed up. They got the guy, obviously, for breaking in and charging him. Plus, the homeowner is going to be charged for assaulting him, which even Doug Ford came on the news brief and was blown away of this guy getting charged. But that's reality with their Canadian laws. Down the States, majority down there in the States, they're allowed to go out and buy a firearm, launch register and everything else, and they're allowed to protect their property even if he came on it. And for this guy to be charged for somebody that was in his home, like Doug Ford said, to protect his family and this, that, and everything else, to be charged, I think that just got to change.
Yeah, I mean, the stand your ground laws in the United States might actually be a step too far, to be honest. But, you know, in Canada, you're only allowed to defend yourself with reciprocal defense. If someone's coming at me to punch me or kick me, I'm only allowed to punch and kick him back. I'm not allowed to shoot him dead. So
no, and I understand that, but even for the altercation, like I said in Toronto, for this guy, like again, to get an altercation with him, I guess this fight, whatever, and probably got him down till the police came and say whatever. That gentleman that was in his own home and have somebody come in to break in his house, that homeowner should never be charged for anything other than defend his family.
I understand. If you come into my house and I have the capacity to wake up and get you, even if you're going to throw a fist, you're going to leave in much worse shape than you came in.
Yes, absolutely.
Appreciate the time, Mike.
You have a good day.
You too, pal. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's take a break for the news. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Harry Andrews. You're on the air.
Hello, Patty. How are you?
I'm doing okay, thank you. How about you?
Good. I'm grand. I'm just calling again. I called you a number of occasions on this, and that's the MOU. It amazes me that it's not a topic of conversation on every Newfoundlander's mind, because I think we've come to the point that we're treating it as another political agreement. And now that this other group has come out and they've produced Facebook and that, people are interpreting, oh yeah, well that's the PCs type thing. But we're about to be asked. They're putting together now definitive agreements, and we'll be asked to sign them within maybe the next year and a half. And that will be the most substantial document that we have signed maybe in the next 100 years. And people are not, they don't seem to be paying attention to it. And I feel like Mr. Premier Hogan is a lawyer. If two individuals came to him and they wanted to live together, to cohabitate, to get into an agreement, I think that he's morally, if not legally, obliged to ask them to seek independent legal advice. Even if he drew up the document for one person, he would insist that the other person get independent legal advice. And I think that's all we're asking is, look, let's just look at it from our point of view, and we understand all the implications of it. The other concern I have, and this is a big one, is that we signed a MOU. That's just a memorandum of understanding saying that with the way things are right now, we'll agree to this. But things have changed or have a potential for great change. Like we could have agreed to give somebody a house and find out that they just got a franchise that's a global franchise that now it's worth a fortune. And all I'm saying is that it's such an important agreement for every Newfoundlander. It's not the fisheries that affect certain sectors. It's not agriculture. It's not, health care that affects some areas worse than others. This is every Newfoundlander will be affected by this agreement.
No argument.
And we should be taken as a like we're almost like the United States. If the Republicans say something, the Democrats say it's a lie. And now we're to the point, if one party comes up with something, they're just discounted. And I think people are looking at it as political. This is something the Liberals doing, and the PCs are against it. But that's all BS. This is Newfoundland signing a most significant real estate deal that we've ever signed.
Yeah, the only document that comes close would be the Atlantic Accord insofar as importance goes. So a couple of things. Like, I don't want to put words in Tony Wakeham's mouth, but the only real opposition we've heard, politically speaking, is that there isn't what people call independent oversight. The three-person committee that has been struck has three competent professionals on it, I would suggest, but they're kind of hamstrung. They're only able to deal with what's actually in the MOU, not some of the things that may come to bear into the future, such as the decades-old conversation regarding an east-west energy corridor. For me, that changes the issue dramatically. So even if we move towards these definitive agreements, of which there's going to be many, not just one contract, there's going to be 10 or maybe 12. Yep. Inside that, if we do not include and negotiate a renegotiation, if and when we have the free flow of power from east to west and west to east, then we are further handcuffing ourselves.
That's correct. Yep. But all this would be revealed if there was some independent oversight. And it really ticks me off because they have formed a committee and they have some very reputable names on it. And then people associate the names and say, oh, they'll take care of us. But those people don't have a mandate. It's like asking some famous football player to come and oversee our Olympics. And they say, oh, well, it'll certainly be done because he's got great experience. But then they tell you, yeah, well, his job, he's going to collect the tickets. You know, he has got no other mandate. All these people are doing is they're looking at the MOU, and their job is to make sure that the agreements are drawn up exactly to what the MOU says. It has nothing to do with, but just wait now. Well, what about if there is a power corridor and in 30 years' time we find out that we can sell power all across Canada and down to the United States, but we've given Quebec exclusive rights? The way I look at it with my grandchildren, if something goes wrong in 30 years' time, there's a natural disaster, there's a war, there's something, and this deal goes bad, go up to Mr. Hogan and shake his hand and say, you know what, you tried, well done. But if in 30 years' time this thing goes wrong, and it was because something we could have corrected if we'd looked at it, I'd tell my grandchildren, go out and find Mr. Hogan. Then you can shake whatever part you grab first. What I'm saying is there's an opportunity now to just have a look at it from our point of view. What if this happens? What if this happens? Because I don't want my grandchildren sitting down and say, wow, that's a lousy deal. And when we go to Quebec and we say, you know, that was a lousy deal. Did you know that then? And they're going to say, you know, a deal's a deal. Really unfortunate.
Yeah.
But it's not a deal now. It's only an MOU.
Right. I mean, the last comment from me, before, and I'll give you the floor to wrap it up. You know, if we're talking about painting different scenarios that could come to bear into the future, that's one thing. But if we're going to have a so-called independent oversight, for someone just to tell me whether or not we got the best deal possible, that's only ever going to boil down to an opinion. That doesn't deal with contingencies in the future. So that whole, did we get the best deal? Nobody knows, and there's no definitive answer can be brought to bear on that front. But if we say, you know, elasticity for pricing for electricity from Hydro-Quebec to whoever, Vermont or Connecticut or the Maine or whether we talk about an east-west energy corridor, what that means for the price of electricity and the flow of electricity, whether we talk about the Gull Island access point of 225 megawatts, whether we talk about predictable expansion of the Labrador recall block, given changing markets for electricity, you know, those things we should be talking about. But the whole concept of did we get the best deal, that's just an opinion. As far as I'm concerned, anyway, people can try to prove me wrong, but you know, if you ask Deloitte and Touche, or if you ask Goldman Sachs, or you ask TD or RBC or Manitoba Hydro or whoever, they might come back with different opinions, which exactly what it would be an opinion.
Oh, I agree, and that's I think the point is that don't make it a simple black and white committee. Oh, it's a good deal or it's not a good deal. It's somebody looks at it, they analyze it, and they say, what if this happens? What about if this power corridor does happen? It may never happen, but let's put a clause in there to say, in the event of. So we're supposed to be tickled pink now because we had an escalation clause. We're supposedly getting 2% a year. But what about if in 30 years we find out Quebec can sell all of our power for 68 cents a kilowatt hour, and we look back and it says, yeah, we don't have any more further what if clause because we're still confined at 2%. Anyway, it's just all I'm asking Newfoundland is to get up out of their ass, have a look, and say, is this really an agreement or is this just somebody mouthing off again? This is the most important agreement that you and your family will be affected by for the next 75 years. Have a look and don't just leave it up to somebody else.
Appreciate the time. Thanks, Harry.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Final break of the morning. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to a former South River councillor. That's Ryan Snow. Ryan, you're on the air.
Hello, Mr. Daly. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing well. So I wanted to phone in. I'm getting some backlash from a post I put on Facebook, which was I do believe most of the shares came from they're not reading it properly. So
I read it.
My original. You read it, yeah. So some people are thinking that, you know what, hey, this guy is out to hate. I'm not out to hate. Mr. Daly, I was a councillor with South River for 4 years. As of yesterday, I had to resign, sadly. I was the chair of joint council for the CBN area, which looked after 11 communities and almost 30,000 residents. Just previously, everything changes, and or there's a new chair of joint council. But my post was not out to hurt people. My post was in the contention that we are protecting the people of Newfoundland and Labrador that are, look, they live here, they are from here, they pay taxes here for years and years and years. And I do believe that, and I can tell you, Mr. Daly, that I can tell you firsthand that the residents that are taken away from Western Bay all the way down, towards Bay de Verde, they got to sleep on gymnasium floors. They're sleeping in old schools that are not even schools anymore. They had to get plumbers in, and I can't say the names because I'm going to get in trouble. But it's real. It's real, Mr. Daly.
Yes, for starters, call me Paddy. But what should be done then, Ryan? I guess is the question.
I feel I'm not against. Look, I'm a Canadian. I'm a Newfoundlander and a Labradorian, and I will always stay true to these problems. I will always stand up for the people that live here. And if I ever get an opportunity to be on council again, I will advocate every single time. And what I'm trying to say is that, like, these people that are displaced is the proper word, actually. Give them hotels, give them a place that just brings something back to their life. Look, they just lost their house. They just lost everything. There's over 100 properties gone down in that area. And these people are like, we're treating them like dogs. We're making them go sleep in schools. That's not real, Mr. Paddy. It's wrong. It's so wrong in so many ways.
Yes, but what hotel rooms? I read the post, and to be bluntly honest, it came across as pretty xenophobic. It just did. I know you're saying that people read it the wrong way, but like, what hotel rooms? Who gets bumped out of a hotel room as a tourist or anybody else to accommodate someone who is unfortunately and heartbreakingly displaced because of a wildfire?
well, there's more than one hotel room. So, like, if there's residents from Western Bay, if they got to go stay in the Delta, if they got to go stay in Clareville into a hotel, no, like, that's not what I'm getting at. My argument is more like, hey, take care of our people, put them in the same hotel rooms, give them the same things, feed them, give them. Look, if that were me, and I get displaced, my house got burnt down. Like, first and foremost, that's the biggest problem I have on my plate right now. Well, guess what? I don't look at going to work tomorrow because I don't have a house anymore, and all the things that I own are in my house and they're gone, and these people are getting displaced. And you know what, Paddy? Look, people can call me. I don't even know what xenophobia is. I really do not. Nor do I care at looking at it. I'm looking at this as a real and constructive point of view. If you don't like the truth, it doesn't make it not true.
But what is the truth, though? I think that's what's missing here, Ryan, because some of the things that you said were factually incorrect, so they were not true. Like, you made specific reference to the Comfort Inn as being some sort of hotel set up for immigrants. It's not true, though, right? And even if you look at the Delta or the Sheraton or Jag or any hotels here on this strip on Kenmount Road, it's just so unfortunate, the timing. I mean, not only the peak of tourism season, but like with the games in town, I think vacancy in the metro region is zero. So that's the question: is where could people go?
They don't have to go to the metro region. They don't have to go to the metro region.
No, but you mentioned the Delta,
and also too, Paddy. No. I'm gonna go backwards now. If you're gonna say to me that, like, the Comfort Inn on Portugal Road is not used for, anyways, I'm gonna stop that conversation short because I'm not gonna put myself in another noose. But if the people of our province, if they need to go somewhere, I'm just looking at this as a rescue style of idea. Don't treat our people improperly. They pay taxes here for years. I would prefer. Look, I'm only a town councillor. Look, I'm nothing in government. I'm nothing. Actually, I'm less than that now because I resigned yesterday. My thing is that the people need to be treated better. And they're not getting treated better. And Paddy, if you want to argue with me, you can. I don't want to argue at all.
I'm not arguing with you. I asked you just a very simple question, which I think is a logical one after what you wrote, is if not what's happening now, what should happen and where would that be? That's all. That's not me trying to put you in a noose. I have no reason to. There's no win for me on that in that column. So it's just very fundamental. If not what we're currently doing with multiple government agencies, multiple charitable organizations, where could people be put? I have no problem with trying to find more comfortable accommodations for anybody, especially if you've been displaced by a wildfire, especially if your home is maybe burnt to the ground. So that's all I'm asking is, where do you suggest people could go? That's all.
Okay, so if there is open hotels in this province, these people should be given an open hotel room where they can go in and shower and live like a proper human being. And secondly, they should be given like the food and the amenities. It's bad enough that their house and everything's burnt down, but like it's just like, for me, it's deplorable. It's not human, and to make these people go and sleep in gymnasiums and schools, it's wrong. It's just wrong in so many ways, Paddy. Like, look, you can get mad at me all you want. I don't care if the media gets mad at me.
Who said I was mad at you, Ryan? I haven't got the brain space to be mad at you.
You're not mad at me. I've got that many texts and emails and calls in the last 24 hours that think I'm out against immigrants. I am not. I believe that Canada is the most beautiful place in this world to live. And I commend anybody that wants to come here, because Newfoundland and Labrador is a unique and beautiful opportunity for anybody that wants to come here and live. Canada is even better, and we should all be grateful for living in a great country that we have. I'm not against immigrants. Look, if the asylum seekers or anyone else comes here, look, you took asylum here because you knew Canada would protect you, and we will, and I will. And I will always back them up. Like, I'm not against anybody that comes from anywhere. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm a good politician. I'm good at what I do. I protect the people around me. I just sometimes I vocalize and people don't understand, and they take it out of context.
Okay.
But
Just because it's 12 o'clock, we're going to have to leave it pretty soon. But, far be it for me to give anybody any advice. But like everything, especially when we're talking about politics and policy and these types of things, people can complain, but unless they have a solution on top of the complaint, then it's always going to be read the most harsh way possible. That's how human nature works. That's how people reacted to your post. Yes. Had you said, here's what we should do, here's where they could go, I've called this hotel, I've called this Airbnb, I've called this particular establishment, they have room, let's put the people there. If that had to be part of the post, it probably would have tempered a lot of the negativity that came your way.
Yes, and Paddy, look, I didn't mean to stir the pot. I just believe that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are they're in my heart. I grew up and I'm raised and from here. I love this place more than you'll ever know, and I'll always live and protect the people from Newfoundland and Labrador. My post was not out to be judgmental. It wasn't out to hurt the immigrants. And I'll tell you what, Paddy, there's 4 bedrooms in my house. If I had the house, people from I don't care where they're from, come live in my house. I do not care. My thing was that the people of the province should be treated better. I appreciate your time, Mr. Paddy. I know it's 12 o'clock. Yeah. You enjoy your day, and we can reconvene later on.
You too. Thank you. There you go. That's Brian Snow, former councillor out in South River. All right, good show today. Big thanks to all hands. We will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.